I'm a 47-year-old man. I'm not exactly the target audience of Taylor Swift and her music, but I'm also a girl dad. My daughter loves her and plays her songs day after day. So whether I wanted to or not, I've been exposed to a lot of Taylor Swift over the past few years. A lot. Being a philosopher and professor of critical thinking, I couldn't help but wonder, what does the popularity of certain singers and songwriters really say about us as a society? At its core, popular culture may be entertainment, but it's not just entertainment. It's also a mirror to our deepest psyche, a window to our collective soul. So I decided to do something fun. I collected more than 200 of Taylor's songs and analyzed their lyrics in detail. What I found was interesting and revealing about American culture over the past 2 decades. In this episode, I'll show you what I found. But I'm not just gonna do that. I'll also teach you how to think about language and song lyrics in a mathematical way, free of subjective bias and preference, using only facts. So this is not an entertainment video. It's a lesson that will sharpen your thinking skills and help you understand much more than just Taylor Swift. Music is one of those things that is highly sensitive to individual taste. You either like it or you don't. As somebody who grew up on the grunge and punk rock of the 1990s, I have no emotional reaction to girly pop. I always thought of it as empty and meaningless entertainment, shopping mall music, nothing more than that. But I also know that anything dependent on taste and preference can cloud our judgment and prevent us from seeing the truth. Perhaps there is some deeper meaning behind Taylor's music. Perhaps if we dig down, we can uncover something not just about Taylor as a songwriter, but also about us as a society. There's a slight problem though. How can I do that if her lyrics don't touch my heart at all, if I don't understand and can't relate to her songs? Fortunately, human language is not just a carrier of meaning and emotion. It is also a highly structured system that has mathematical properties, and those properties allow us to analyze it on a deeper level, independent of our subjective experiences. One of these properties is its statistical nature. Language is profoundly statistical. Its elements, from letters to words, phrases, and sentences, follow clear patterns we can describe and analyze with statistics. Those patterns can reveal more about who we are, what we long for, and what we fear, things we might otherwise miss. So to go beyond me being emotionally equivalent to a brick when it comes to Taylor's art, I decided to analyze her lyrics with these tools. I collected 215 of her songs and performed a simple statistical analysis to see what lies beneath. To understand the patterns in Taylor's lyrics, we first need to prepare them for analysis. Language is like a beautiful embroidery. There's a structure beneath it, but many elements are just decoration. To get to the underlying structure, we have to strip language down to essentials. There are 4 key steps here. First, take the lyrics and remove all clutter, punctuation, symbols, capitalization. Second, reduce each word to its basic root form, called a lemma. For example, waiting is reduced to wait and knowing to know. Lemmatization unifies all similar forms. Then we split the text into individual words. This is called tokenization, and it makes all sentences disappear. What is left is a bag of words, each one now like a little Lego block we can count. Finally, since not all words are equally meaningful, we remove the very common ones, the so-called stop words like a, the, is, of. What remains are the words that carry the most meaning and tell us what the text is really about. Now we can treat those words as mathematical objects that can be counted, averaged, and understood using basic tools of statistics. One of the simplest things we can do is measure how rich Taylor's vocabulary has been over time. We count how many unique words appear in her songs each year. Here's what we see over the years. In the early years, her vocabulary was modest. As she grew, it expanded, peaking in 2012 with the album Red. Critics agree here too. That album was a turning point, where she experimented across genres and styles and transitioned from an adolescent to a grown woman. But since then, her vocabulary has shrunk, likely not because she forgot words, but because she adapted her writing to pop. Lean, hook-heavy, simple songs, engineered for streams and short attention spans. It seems that her lyrics map nicely onto the cultural economy of our time. Complexity gave way to simplicity. Our culture traded depth for virality. The TikTokization of pop coincides with Taylor's vocabulary returning to something closer to her teenage years. Another thing we can measure is sentiment, the emotional tone of her lyrics. This method is called sentiment analysis, and it uses a lexicon of words scored between -1 and +1, where negative words like hate lower the score and positive words like love raise it. When we apply this method to Taylor's lyrics over the years, we see something interesting. First of all, none of her songs are really negative. There is no anger, rage, hate, or anything like that. Overall, she's a nice gal, singing about mostly positive things. But we see some nuance over time. Her early years were bright and optimistic, and then we see a sudden dip in 2012 and 2014. I'm sure devout Swifties would know why this happened, followed by a rebound a few years later, only to nosedive again during the pandemic, when we all felt the blues. What is interesting here is to see how the emotional roller coaster is not just a personal thing, dependent on one's age and life experiences. It's a culture phenomenon too. Taylor's lyrics are not just her sentiments, they are an emotional barometer for America as a whole. By far, one of the coolest things you can do with quantitative analysis of language is let the statistical algorithm try to find the predominant topics in any piece of writing, including Taylor's songs. This has been long a challenge for computers, because they're not human and they can't really understand language, but they can do something else really well. Compute correlations between words, that is, find out which words often occur together and separate them into smaller clusters. By doing so, they can actually identify what any piece of writing talks about. There is really a fascinating algorithm that allows us to do that, but I'm not going to describe it here, since it would take up a lot of our time. If you're interested, drop a comment and I'll make a special video about it. But I used this algorithm, and even without knowing much about Taylor and her music, I identified 8 themes that recur in her songs: nostalgia and longing, conflict and betrayal, desire, empowerment, heartbreak, nightlife and casual love, fun and playful hooks, and romantic beginnings. These are the main topics we can find in almost all of her albums, to a greater or lesser degree. But there are some interesting differences in which themes took the center stage in each of her albums. Check out this year-to-year analysis. We see here, for example, how romantic beginnings used to be an important topic in her early years, only to be supplanted by other ones like desire, heartbreak, and empowerment. We also see a gradual leveling of topics, as if she strategically decided not to be a single-issue songwriter, but rather spread her thematic reach a bit wider, covering a range of issues, and by doing so, appealing to a broader audience. This also explained why a 47-year-old dude is not really her target demographic. We're just not interested in these things. What is really fascinating about this kind of analysis is that it allows you to get a bird's eye view of any piece of culture. This is a perspective we don't usually have access to. Most of the time, we're immersed in culture. Language is something we used to think with, rarely to think about, especially in a quantitative and computational way. But changing your perspective from time to time can lead to useful insights. Language looks messy, but it's statistical and patterned. With the right tools, you can uncover hidden signals in lyrics, news, tweets, and everyday speech. Taylor's lyrics say something about her, definitely, but they also say something about us, about what it felt like to grow up in the early 2000s, to live through disillusionment, to survive the pandemic, and to enter the age of irony. So next time you hear a Taylor Swift song, don't just think about the melody, think about the data hiding in the words, because language is not just how we sing, it's how culture leaves traces of itself. Thanks for watching another episode. This is Think Why, and I'm your critical thinking professor. See you next time.